want to officially welcome Chief Jones, as well as Assistant Chief Chief Augustine of Montgomery County. Thank you so much for all that you're doing to protect our county, our municipalities. We wanted to give you an opportunity and say thank you for, I know this has been a very, very busy season for you all, but if you would, please give us a brief overview of some of the trends and highlights that you're seeing, and then we will have a Q&A period. And then for those who have joined, just a note that we will also have a business meeting immediately following.
Okay, thank you all so very much. And again, thank you for having us again with the Maryland Municipal League. It's always an honor, Montgomery, I should say, and it's always an honor to be with you all and share just some brief information and answer questions that you may have about our department. You know, one of the main issues that, again, I think that's on everyone's mind simply centers around a lot about our retention and our hiring of officers. And currently we are about 125 officers down, which is unprecedented territory for us. But we have been able to really manage our workload and be very efficient. We've made some changes about how we allocate our resources to make sure that we're still providing the same services. That has not stopped. We've not done anything drastic. We do focus a lot on, in some cases, for individuals who are reporting crimes to us, that sometimes we are taking those police reports over the telephone. So we have a telephone reporting unit in order to keep our officers readily available to answer calls for service at each of our police district stations. All of my district commanders, all 6 of my district commanders, provide me updates weekly with their staffing issues. And we will and have reallocated resources where we think it's necessary. One of the main things that I've done to make sure that we're really monitoring, we put our patrol division, which is what I look at as probably the most important division, due to the fact that they are your first responders. They are the individuals who are answering the 911 calls and the calls for service through our communication center. Of course, they're our patrol officers. And those are where the main issue is. We want to make sure we have enough of those officers to be able to respond in quick manners and not have any impact on our response times and be readily available to our citizens. And so what we've done is, you know, we've maintained, again, monitor the numbers of officers in the patrol bureau at each of the district stations. And one of the things that have been impacted is our specialty units, particularly our detective bureaus and some of the other support units. I've been very cautious about when those vacancies occur, when someone retires or someone leaves that position for promotion, to work with my other assistant chiefs to make sure that we are looking at this as a mission necessary position that needs to be filled. And if we deem that we and can afford to not necessarily fill that position currently because of the mission of the particular unit or division, then we will freeze that position, and therefore it won't impact our patrol division, because many of these positions do get filled from our patrol bureau, which then makes the numbers even lower. So we're being very, very you know, observant and monitoring those positions to make sure that they don't have the negative impact on our patrol bureau. So I just want to highlight, and I'm going to turn it over to Chief Augustine in a little bit to allow him to talk about more statistically about what's happening with our crimes. But I want to just highlight across the county, you know, when we look at our violent crimes, homicides last year in 2022 have dropped from, we were at 32 in 2021, and we went down to 22 homicides in 2022. And I'm pleased to also note that we were able to solve 92% of those crimes, those homicides, which is a very high closure rate for a department of our size. So I'm very proud of our major crimes division to be able to solve that. When we look at a lot of the crimes that occur regionally, and what's happening in Montgomery County is happening regionally, as we look at some of the trends as it relates to carjackings, and I'm gonna give that. I'm not gonna step on Chief Augustine's on his presentation, but as we look at things such as carjackings, robberies, and stolen autos, we're seeing an increase comparably as we see the other local jurisdictions such as Fairfax, the District of Columbia, as well as Prince George's County, to name a few. And in fact, ironically, I've been in Washington the last couple of days, and I've been talking to those police chiefs about our local problems and how we are working on some plans to do our best to come up with strategies to resolve them. So again, those are some of the main things that are happening. Of course, people are coming back in some normalcy out of COVID, and our traffic is increasing, as I'm sure many of you probably are experiencing that if you're out and about. And we also noticed some of our crimes that were not occurring during COVID, such as burglaries, because people were at home. We knew a lot of our residential burglaries were not happening. Now that people are going back to work, we really need to remind our communities that they still need to be very cautious in locking their residences as well as their other properties, such as cars, in order to maintain, again, preventive measures to stop this. And I do, again, I want to focus on the issues that we center around, again, like with traffic. One of the main things that we've seen, that we saw, and I think I shared this with with the league last year, where we saw traffic offenses really rising throughout the county. We saw people speeding and driving recklessly right around coming out of COVID, and even as people were trying to come back to some normalcy. And we're still seeing that. And the one thing that I do want to note is that in the county, we have more traffic fatalities. We had 40, I believe we had 43 last year. We have more traffic fatalities than we have homicides. And traffic safety is still very important to us. We're still pretty much, again, focusing on a lot of our main roadways, but we really do want to work feverishly this year in order to come up with plans and working with our other local jurisdictions in order to really focus on traffic safety and get down pedestrian fatalities, to get down fatalities of bicyclists and motorcycle riders, as well as our other individuals in vehicles, in order to minimize that and really try to do some preventive measures, educate people along the way. And I know there's a lot of work we've done with the Vision Zero, but we got a lot of work to do. So I'm going to pass it over to Chief Augustine to allow him to talk a little bit more about statistics, and then we'll answer your questions that you may have.
Thank you, Chief. So the first one I'm going to go over is our hate crime and bias-related incidents. In Montgomery County, we are different than some of the other agencies within the state. Is we actually take police reports for bias-related incidents, which technically aren't crimes, but we want that statistical information so we know where the issues are going on in the community, and hopefully work with both internal government and external partners to address those underlying issues that may lead to future hate crimes. So just in the month of January, we had 8 bias-related incidents, but we had 14 hate crimes. 2 years ago or even 3 years ago, it would be the other way around. We had more bias-related incidents than we had hate crimes. So a majority of these incidents, I'd probably say 95% of them are vandalisms, where it's destruction of property with either swastikas or vandalism through painting something on a sign and so on. Very few are actual physical assaults, but we've had a couple in the month of January. Most of the targeted groups currently is anti-Semitic. We do have some for the LGBTQ plus community, but majority in the month of January were anti-Semitic, and we take these very seriously. Currently, majority of these reports go to the district patrol investigative unit. We're looking to change that, but a lot of notifications are made when we take a report of this to also provide support to the victims. Let them know what resources are out there for them and provide a victim advocate when they are victimized. The next thing that we've seen an increase in is firearms that we recovered. In 2022, Montgomery County Police recovered over 1,200 firearms. That's a 19% increase from the prior year. And with these recovery of firearms, what we've also seen, we had 186 firearm discharges, our non-fatal shootings. Chief Jones talked about our 21 homicides, which all weren't firearm related, but we look at these 186 non-fatal shootings, and the number that was out of that, 48 of them were contact shootings, which means this victim was actually shot. And we talk about the low number of homicides, but any of those 48 contact shootings could turn into a homicide. It just luckily they did not, but we have to think about it that way, that our homicide number could be higher related to firearms. So we've been working with our special investigative division to address these firearms, as well as with our partners with the state's attorney's office. And earlier this year, we were working with our legislators with the issue referenced ghost guns. So we'll continue to address that. We have our forensic lab working on recovery of ballistics from it to try to link it to other firearms and other incidents that have occurred, not only in the county, but regionally and across the United States that firearm may be tied to. Another increase we've had is robberies. So in 2022, we had 541 robberies, and that's an 18% increase. Towards the latter part of 2022 into 2023, we saw an increase in our commercial robberies, which is of stores and retail places. So we are working with our partners in that to identify those involved and see if there are any trends with it, or if it's just a one incident where it occurred and it's not an ongoing trend. A very significant increase we had was in auto thefts. In 2022, we had over 1,400 auto thefts in Montgomery County. I believe Chief Jones told me today that Prince George's County already had 800 so far in 2023. So we are not at that level, but our auto thefts last year was the highest since 2012. So a couple weeks ago, we started a new unit that will be addressing our auto crimes and auto thefts within the county to hopefully put a curb to these incidents. A majority of the recovery of these stolen vehicles are being recovered in Washington, D.C. and Prince George's County. But it goes to remind community members to make sure you're taking your keys out of your car, make sure you're locking your car at night. It's something we've been saying for years, but it's something we need to emphasize here. A significant increase we saw is a lot of delivery drivers are parking their car on the curb, leaving their car running, especially in the wintertime, to run in and pick up a package to make a delivery. They come back out of picking up a pizza and their car's not there anymore. So now they're delivering it on foot. So we have to make sure we educate the community out there that, don't leave your vehicle running, put it in a parking space, lock the doors, even if you're just going in for a couple minutes. Another serious incident we've been having is overdoses related to fentanyl and our narcotics. We had 271 in 2022, which is a 22% decrease. And of those 271, 81 were resulting in a fatality. But what we saw surprisingly was our increase in the number of juveniles that have overdosed on fentanyl and narcotics. So we are working with our partners with MCPS and providing education, as well as follow-up investigation and determine the source of where the drugs are coming from, and working with our federal partners if we identify a source and making sure we can stop where it's coming from and getting into our community. So that is a brief overview of what we saw towards the end of 2022 and what we're seeing in 2023. I'll be more than happy to answer any questions that you have this evening.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions that we had initially coming into the meeting, and then I'm going to ask folks to either put your question in chat and we'll call on you because we would like to keep them somewhat thematic so that we are not taking you in all different topics. But I'm going to start off with the issue of school safety. So, you know, over the past few years, we have had issues with guns making their way into school, people who are not students making their ways into school. It's something that we, you know, heard in January very locally here. I just want to understand how things are going with the new model, and are you seeing an increase in these issues, or just can give us a little bit more detail about your perspective on what's happening in our schools?
Yeah, thank you, Monique. I honestly, we have seen some increase in some incidents that are occurring at our high schools, primarily. That this is where we're having the issues. Our community engagement officers, also formerly known as our school resource officers, of course, as I've briefed this group before to talk about how it is in a cluster model, how they work with all of the schools within the school clusters. But one of the main points about the MOU that we have with MCPS is the fact that our community engagement officers can work at the request of the principals, that if they have significant issues that needs to be addressed from a safety issue, that they can provide additional patrols to those schools and provide additional resources if we need to do that. We've discovered that there are times when that's been necessary, when we've had incidents such as we've had where individuals have unlawfully, when I say unlawfully, are not within school policy, have allowed other students that don't even go to the school into the school. And then there's been disturbances as a result thereof. That's been a problem. And so therefore, we've had to really kind of look at some strategies with MCPS security in order to have more officers available and to come up with a better plan in order to address that. So we are, again, actively assessing all schools. Again, every school is not necessarily created equal with problems such as that. And sometimes we have to move resources around. And I try not to do that too often with our community engagement officers unless it's absolutely necessary. But as I've always stated, I think that having our officers in the schools to be able to address many of the problems, to communicate with the staff, and to be able to kind of be on a preventive end of any incident happen rather than being in a reactive mode is a much better place to be. And it's one thing I've talked to Dr. McKnight over, wholeheartedly about. Similarly to like the issues they're having with overdoses in schools, where we're finding that sometimes the students are going into the bathrooms and utilizing, the illegal substances that are, causing the overdoses or causing some sort of medical treatment that needs to, because of them sometimes being unconscious. But I think, again, each school, we have to come up with those specific plans about the problems that we're seeing as it relates to that.
Thank you. And I appreciate that you mentioned two things that I wanted to pull the thread on. One is across the county, we've heard from some students who say they are afraid to go to the bathroom, or they don't go to the bathroom when they should.
Right. Yes, I've heard that.
And I know
yes.
That's not necessarily a police issue, but I wonder if there's an opportunity to coordinate on how we can make bathrooms safer, whether they're sweeps or whatever, with school
Right.
officials and school security, because kids should be able to go to the bathroom.
I 100% agree with that. And I think that we should do everything in our power to help schools and come up with plans to be able to make sure the students feel safe to be able to go to the bathroom on any given day. So, that's very disturbing to hear. I've heard that some students will even go to the main office or go to the health office in order to utilize a staff bathroom because of their fears. And I think that's really not a good place for us to be. That's not what Montgomery County brings to we should have for our students. And we need to address that safety issue. And I'm committed, as well as my officers, to do it in a very respectful manner, but to make sure that those bathrooms are clear for students to be able to use them without being fearful.
Perfect, thank you. And then related to another comment you made about fentanyl getting into schools, some other jurisdictions are seeing candied fentanyl or
Yes.
laced fentanyl, where it might be in like a vape pen or a some other marijuana. It's kind of embedded in. So
Right.
is that something that you're seeing in this jurisdiction?
So we have not seen an influx of the edibles with fentanyl. We have seen them with marijuana, the edibles that are available. But I will tell you, the fentanyl piece does scare us because there's these different aspects of, again, of the fentanyl drug being, being disguised as it's something else. Whether it's pill form or in an edible form. So one thing I will share with this group is that one of the things I've made a commitment to do is, and it is a heavy commitment, but I think it's worth it, is for every overdose that we get called for within Montgomery County, for whatever age of the individual who is overdosed, I send a narcotics investigator to the scene. Whether the individual survives or not. But one of the goals is not to address the individual who has overdosed. The goal is to try to find who is distributing this illegal drug that's causing death and causing havoc in our community. I'm looking for the actually drug dealers. And we've had some success in finding some of these individuals as a result of us doing those investigations. So we'll continue to do that. And we continue to monitor and work with our federal partners and local and state officials to make sure that, again, that we're following any trend, such as if we think that there is, candy laced fentanyl that's becoming a problem. And trust me, if we find that, we're going to make sure we alert the community for that danger.
Thank you. And I did see that some schools are starting to carry Narcan now.
Yes. All schools should have access to Narcan at this point in time. Okay. All of our officers carry it. All of our CEOs carry it. And of course, fire rescue on their units, they also carry it. So, and we're encouraging it for those people in our communities to get access if they think that they may necessarily need to have that.
Thank you. All right, so I am seeing a couple questions come in. I had some directly DM'd to me. One was related to just understanding, is the CEO model the same as when it was set up? Or are there any changes that would be helpful for municipalities to understand?
Yeah, we have not made any changes to the CEO policy since we implemented it last April of 2022. So we've kept that intact to this point. And again, we continuously monitor, the CEO's performance and what is being reported in our schools. We're keeping statistics on every school within Montgomery County Public Schools. To show what are we doing as a response to any calls for service that we have at those schools.
Thank you. I'm just going to pause and see if anyone has another question on school safety. My next topic is going to go to carjackings and auto theft. Just a heads up on the topic change. Okay. I'm just checking chat really quick. Perfect. So next section, topic that our chapter was interested in is related to auto thefts. You talked about it's the highest since 2012. A number of I've seen you all have posted it, and next door people are posting it, where it seems like it's professionalized. There is a car traveling with 3 to 4 individuals. They're like working our streets, so like canvassing. Can you share, what is the new auto theft unit doing? Are the cameras that are, whether that's through a Ring or other vendor, are they helping you solve these crimes?
I'm going to pass that off to Chief Augustine, because he's overseeing the implementation of our new auto theft unit. So Chief Augustine.
Yes, thank you, Chief. So earlier part of last year, our prior auto theft detectives were brought to be involved in a task force, and we had 3 members that were on temporary assignments. In December, Chief Jones signed off on the creation of our auto crime enforcement section, and it will be 5 detectives and 1 sergeant. And this unit will be responsible for handling the follow-up investigation of auto thefts, as well as proactive auto theft investigation, and addressing crimes related to catalytic converter thefts, airbag thefts, that are trends, and so on. So the sergeant was selected 2 weeks ago and just started up, and he is now selecting the detectives to be assigned to that section. So they will be a mixture of proactive as well as reactive. They're going to be working with our regional partners because a lot of these thefts carry on into other counties and into the District of Columbia. So getting that intel to determine where the vehicle is ending up, if it was used in any other crimes, as well as when we recover it, processing it for evidence. So they have been working. There's been 2 or 3 that have been working recently, but it will be significantly increasing in the next couple of weeks to address these issues. It being a new unit that is starting back up, we have a lot of enthusiastic officers and the supervisor that not only want to do the enforcement aspect, but also the community engagement aspect of this, of educating the public and what we're seeing, getting out into the communities where we're seeing high numbers of vehicle thefts, and providing that educational part out there. So we're hoping to see a reduction in that. Our carjacking numbers, I put it in the chat of the numbers that we saw. They are not included in our auto theft numbers, but in 2022, we had 79 carjackings. Of those 79 carjackings, we closed with arrest 36 of them. And so far in 2023, we've had 11 carjackings, and so far have closed 2 of them. But we will see a significant increase in that number of closures as we're still investigating those cases.
So I know you're just standing the unit up, but in 2022, did you see any closures of the auto theft, or is it people just have a feeling like it's a loss, it's gone, we can't catch these people?
No, we're recovering a majority of those vehicles in Washington, D.C., as well as in Prince George's County. Unfortunately, a lot of these vehicles were used to commit another crime. So some of them are on hold in Washington, D.C. because they were used in shootings or other violent crimes. So that is something we're seeing. We're not seeing a significant number of the vehicles being stolen, then shipped overseas for parts or to be sold over there. That was a trend we had many years ago. We have seen a couple of them, and we're watching to see if that trend is returning. But a lot of these stolen vehicles are because of the opportunity. The vehicle was there and the keys were in it and it was running, and they're using it to get to another location, and they'll ditch a vehicle and they steal another vehicle in that area. So they're not keeping them that long, but some have also been used in criminal activity in this jurisdiction as well as surrounding jurisdictions. And
do the cameras that residents have help? I know that there was some discussions with different municipalities of, I know there's a convict program in some municipalities. There's talk about whether to do DC has it, but a program where people can get lower cost or group purchasing for Ring type cameras for doorbells. Do those work? Are they a worthwhile look for municipalities to consider?
I would say yes, and I'll let Chief Jones talk about our program that was approved by the county council to have that same type of reimbursement aspect of it. But any type of evidence we can get, when I was in the 4th district as commander, I see a lot of people posting on Nextdoor about video they have. Well, unfortunately, the Nextdoor platform doesn't allow law enforcement to see the individual neighborhoods discussions. So we needed the community to message us directly and send us the video. Nextdoor changed that a couple years ago, where law enforcement can't see what the neighbors are typing within their own forums. We can type into forums and make a post about something where people can reply to that. But we started getting a lot of messages, hey, did you all see this ring video in this neighborhood community? Well, we don't have access to that, but luckily that community member alerted us. We told them, have them send the video to this email address. So we just want to make sure that, posting on Nextdoor is one thing, but make sure you're also contacting your district commander. Each district has their own email address, and sending that information there so they can pass it on to the correct investigator that's handling it, so we can evaluate it and see if it's useful for that incident.
Thank you. And we'll try to, maybe if we can just send out the link to the district contacts, we'll do that. Okay.
Yeah,
All
and
right.
if I could just quickly add, Councilmember Ashton, that absolutely that the more cameras that we have out there, the better it would be. So for municipalities thinking about this, I think it is a plus, particularly in some of your areas that may have been hit by, and are hit by, I should say, by constant thefts from autos and auto thefts and things of the other types of crimes. We've been able to solve crimes as a result of individuals who sent us video, because sometimes officers are able to actually identify the individuals through their investigative means. So these are very fruitful for us, particularly when we know there's trends that go across district lines and other areas of concern. So we highly encourage that.
Thank you. And the press releases that you all put out are helpful because it gives people a sense that things are working. You're identifying people. Sometimes you can see the same person. I think there was one time someone was stealing bicycles and they were doing it all over the place, and you found a large grouping, but people were able to see that this reporting does result in action. So
absolutely.
Okay, I'm going to pause and see if there are any other questions on auto theft, and then we'll move to recruitment. Okay. So one of our members is asking, do you think, what can we do to support your efforts to recruit and find new candidates?
Well, there's a couple of things. I think all of the areas we highly encourage. We're doing a much of a campaign to recruit for police officers. We also have a high need for our 911 dispatchers. One of the things that I think has been fruitful for us, and it's not an instant reward program, but it is a program that I call it our farm team. When we have created our police cadet program, that for young people who are interested in, and I would say anyone who's interested in law enforcement, well, particularly those who don't have the college credits. And our cadet program allows for example, someone who just graduated high school, I just use as an example, going to one of our local colleges, such as Montgomery College or University of Maryland, programs at Shady Grove, just to name a couple of them, and they can actually work part-time. We pay them a part-time salary, which is a pretty good deal for, I think they make about $26,000 a year. And they also, they only work 20 hours a week. The goal of this is for them to be enrolled in college full-time. They are earning their 60 college credits or working towards that in the 2 years that they are in the cadet program. And they then have an easier transition into the police department. They've been acclimated to our department to some degree. And we're starting to see some fruits of their labor. The council gave us 23 additional positions for that program. It's starting to grow. We have close to 20 cadets in our program right now. I've got another hiring. We're getting ready to hire some additional cadets come. You may see that out on our website. But if you're talking to people in your community, you know, one of the things, if there's something that we can do to help put up flyers, posters, or post out some information in any manner, we just encourage you to support us as we're trying to bring in more police officers. This current class that I have now, which will be graduating in March, 50% of that class are women. It's the first time we've had 50% of our academy class to be women. So we're feeling good about that, but I really want, I want to hire more women. I want to hire more diversity. And I want to hire more police candidates, right? Police officer candidates. We'd love to be able to hire 50 for our class that's coming in July. So we just all the support that I could get from the community in order for us to do that would be very, very appreciative.
Do you have any social posts? And I want to thank Mayor Costello and Mayor Furman for asking the last set of questions, just acknowledging that. But I wanted to ask, are there any things that you can give to us to push out on our channels that would be helpful?
Sure, I can have my my public information office provide, you all just provide me maybe an email. We can get you access to some of the posts that we provide with our recruitment team from our personnel division, as well as anything else that we may post out on our social media channels in order to recruit. So we'd love to connect with you all on that.
Thank you. And if that could be sent to Beth, and she can just follow up with, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep, I'll have Bobby work with Beth and we'll work through that. Yes.
Okay. And then
Okay.
I know I really appreciate you mentioning the cadets, because we do need to recruit new people to be interested in the career force. And because what's happening now is a lot of trading back and forth with jurisdictions and fighting for the same crowd.
This is very true. Yes, absolutely. We always look for new, but there is a lot of competition going on in the world of policing. And here I am. I'm actually in DC, Washington, as I noted. I'm at the Major City Chiefs Conference, and literally every police chief that's here is talking about hiring and retention. This is a major concern in law enforcement across the country. So absolutely.
All right. Does anyone want to go off mute and ask any other questions about recruitment and staffing? Okay. Ryan Spiegel has asked a question about, you know, the last election. There was the legalization of cannabis, and just want to understand, how are you all looking to provide safe guidance and education, or how you're preparing for the legalization? Sometimes you see people smoking and driving, which I would assume would still be considered under the influence, but people may think it's just, you can do it anywhere at any time, but there are some considerations that people should be aware of.
Yes, absolutely. And that's a great question, Ryan. We are preparing. We have been working with the county executive's office to start to work with our other departmental agencies and trying to get out in front of what to prepare for come July 1st. I have raised several issues of concern about smoking marijuana in public, about smoking marijuana while driving. That is a concern. Underage people's in possession and smoking marijuana. Excuse me, that is still a major concern of mine. In fact, we have been doing a project for a while. We're the only police department in the country that has what we call a weed lab that we do at our training academy. And it is to train our officers on how to identify individuals who are under the influence of marijuana and how they react. And we actually bring in people who have Maryland medical marijuana cards, who actually smoke marijuana. It's hard to believe that it's happening, but they smoke it right in front of us. But it's the change. This is what we're preparing for. And they actually smoke it. And then we then test them. And so they also learn from how marijuana impacts their driving skills and their reaction times and those things. But again, I think there's going to be a lot of growing pains with the legalization of marijuana in our communities. I mean, it's still going to be illegal to smoke in public. And I think there's going to be some issues with that. There's still going to be, individuals who think that they can smoke marijuana and drive. And that's a concern of ours. We've been monitoring and studying states such as Colorado, states such as California, which have already, gone through periods of legalization of marijuana and seeing some of the negative impact that's happened in those states. So there's going to be these constant conversations that I'm having with the local police chiefs on some of the strategies of how we address that, as well as our state partners as well, how to really do this in a way that's to make sure that we're maintaining safe roads, in the midst of the changes of the legalization of marijuana, as an example.
How are you monitoring if you have to make a pullover for someone who's smoking and driving? Alcohol is a very good test for that. So
yeah, it's very similar. Response times of drivers are relatively slow, and we've had some experience with monitoring driving behavior under the influence of drugs. We may think an individual originally, based upon their driving, where they might violate some traffic laws, and when we approach, we may think originally that we may have an individual under the influence of alcohol, only to find out when we approach the vehicle, again, as everyone knows probably, that marijuana has a very distinctive smell. So it is not very difficult to basically pick that up. Very similar to like alcohol. Officers are trained to be able to smell alcohol from one's breath. But the only problem lies is the fact that there are no known test instruments. Things are still being developed to understand how much THC, which is a very interesting component, but is the component that really has some impact on individuals' behavior who have smoked marijuana. So until those things have been, there's still going to be legislation that's going to have to be developed in Annapolis. Courts are going to have to start ruling how that's going to be impacting again, the judicial system of how we address individuals who may be under the influence of marijuana while driving.
Thank you. Next, does anyone else have any questions on this one? All right, we're going to talk about financial fraud just based on some of the questions in chat. So I see that you noted that there are 3,500 financial fraud reports. Are you seeing them mostly targeted towards seniors? Do these resolve in closure? What can you tell us about financial fraud?
So the answer is absolutely. We see an increase, and seniors are clearly at the top of these individuals who unfortunately prey on the elderly community and trying to obtain financial access to their assets. And so though we have a small unit, they have been very efficient in some cases. We're not at this rate of 100% closures as much as I would love us to be. Some of these cases are very difficult to work. They're very because many of these individuals who are committing some of these financial crimes are doing it online. They don't live in the state of Maryland. Sometimes it requires us to work with other federal partners like the U.S. Postal Inspectors, some cases such as the FBI, depending upon the extensive nature of these types of cases. But I will tell you, we have had some success. I think recently I remember our financial crimes unit giving an update about the recovery of hundreds of thousands of dollars of a senior who had been swindled by a fraudster. And we were able to identify the individual who committed the crime, make the arrest, and most importantly, return the money to the individual who had been victimized by this. It's very, these are very sad cases in my opinion, even though it's money, but it's when someone has worked their entire lives for their, for what they've done, to have someone come in and just be able to manipulate a system and really bamboozle them into giving them the money. Those are very disheartening. So I know we have very passionate investigators who work hard in order to try to solve these cases. But we also want to make sure people are reporting these cases, even if someone tries to do it and they're unsuccessful. We want to get that message out as well. We talk to many people in our seniors communities to have that discussion, because there are people that will always try, even though they may not be 100% successful.
Thank you. Any other questions on this topic? Feel free to come off mute. Okay. All right. So last three planned topics will be fast, I promise. But
okay, no problem.
Just to give you a heads up, is firearms, the traffic fatalities, and hate crimes.
Okay. Thank you.
So let's go to firearms. So you spoke about a 19-20% increase. Do you have any sense of why this is happening under your crystal ball, and how much are ghost guns playing a role in this?
So I wish I did have a crystal ball, but I will give you again, as much as I've talked to as many people as I could talk to try to figure out what's happening in our society. And it's a combination of things. There are people who we're seeing more guns in our society than ever. People are buying guns legally at a high rate, and they're buying guns illegally at a high rate. And the black market exists, particularly in this area. And we're seeing more guns, as Chief Augustine noted, from things such as just a traffic stop, that we're seizing illegal guns being transported. Well, of course, with the shootings that go hand in hand with that. Ghost guns go right along with that. We seized, I think, 183 ghost guns in 2022. That's our all-time high. Of course, this is this new phenomenon, and it is contributing again to the accessibility. We talk to, sometimes you have these conversations with individuals you arrest, and you ask them the simple question, why do you carry a gun illegally? And some of the answers they give you is very simplistic. They'll say, because everyone else has a gun. And the unfortunate part about this is, in many cases, we're seeing people attempt to solve disputes, whether it's a road rage incident, whether it's a person that is known to you or unknown to you. People are now thinking that the best way to settle a dispute is basically by pulling the trigger of a gun. So that's the very disturbing part that we're starting to see. And it is very disturbing to me. But unfortunately, that's where we are in today's environment.
Thank you. I will just note that Rockville had a gun buyback program, and we retrieved, several ghost guns, and they were at all levels of sophistication. Some had smiley hearts on them. It was really, really discomforting to see the proliferation of these. So I know that the state level, they're now at least illegal, but it seems that people are getting them way too easily. So it just, that's something we want to see us better track where the sources of things are coming from and try to shut those down.
Absolutely. And the unfortunate part is, like, for example, you go over the Potomac River into the state of Virginia, and you can go to the Dulles Expo Center for a gun show. And literally you see gun dealers. We've sent our detectives over to observe this firsthand, and they're literally selling ghost guns. I would just tell you by the dozens to individuals. There are no background checks. There's really no identification check. It's really a cash carry business. That's how easy it is to actually go buy a ghost gun in this community. And there's also online companies that are selling them. And there's other assets, other ways that individuals are getting their guns on them, particularly in the black market. But that's an example of simply how easy it is that these guns are actually being distributed on our streets.
Are you seeing an increase among youth or anything specific to youth in this regard?
Yeah, that again, another disturbing trend. Absolutely, that our youth are also getting their hands on ghost guns and other illegal guns. I mean, we again in 2022, nearly a year ago, I had a call to action for the community because we began to see an increase in juvenile crime involving guns, involving shootings. I had 14-year-olds who were actually pulling the trigger, committing homicides in Germantown, as an example. And I felt like it was really a need for us to wrap our arms around this issue before it got out of hand. I was very fearful that we were going to have a very violent summer. But I think, again, there were a lot of resources that were pulled together that helped us to go into these communities and address some of these issues. And we were able to prevent these crimes from occurring. And we didn't have a violent summer as a result thereof. But I will still tell you that I am still concerned about the volume of our youth that still have access to these weapons that we still know about.
Two questions, and then I'll close this one out. But how many guns were found in schools in 2022? And second part question is there a program where when this is found to happen with our youth, that there is a way to give them life coach or give them another path to put them on a different course, a more positive course?
Yes, two things with that. The first is about the guns in schools. I don't have the exact numbers, but I don't think we had the recovery of, we know we had the Magruder incident that everyone is very familiar with. But in last year, we may have had some recoveries of some guns, but it was not I don't think it was an exorbitant amount. And that's something that we're still seeing from time to time, the threats of individuals even bringing guns to school. But again, I don't think that's been an overall major problem in our school system. The second part, remind me again, Monique.
Oh, just how are you helping to redirect? I mean, there's the penalty aspect of it, but how do we get kids on the right path?
Well, much of that really centers around how do we handle sort of the prosecution and any diversion that we do with the state's attorney's office. And a lot of that is really done in the criminal justice system. Again, we are working with our health and human services, such as Street Outreach Network, and identifying some of the troubled kids in some of our troubled neighborhoods that we've identified where we have higher incidents of crime and also where we may have some gang activity in order to try to do some interventions. I can't say we always are 100% successful, but I know we give it a shot to try to make sure we do our very best to try to divert some of these kids down the right road.
All right. Anyone have any follow-up questions on this topic? So I saw some questions on pedestrian safety and traffic fatalities. I thought it was very interesting that you said that there are more traffic fatalities than homicides.
That's correct. Yes.
So where are you? Are you seeing consistencies on where these are happening? And is that something that we can help advocate for? We have had a county meeting on issues with some state roads and things that we were, a 3-point strategy of what we want to see happen. And I know some of our municipalities are including that in our advocacy, but is there any insight you can share with us on what you're seeing?
Sure. So I will tell you one of the strategies that we've been utilizing is I have created a centralized traffic unit that focuses on our main roadways. And we have a traffic analyst that actually provides statistical data to help us to see where our hotspots are with the numbers of collisions that we have in the county and at specific locations. And we put our officers in those locations to try to educate and provide some enforcement efforts to change people's behaviors. And pedestrian safety is really, it's a collective effort that I think we have to, again, remind our pedestrians as much, because sometimes, we find that there are clearly driver errors when it comes to the failure to yield to our pedestrians. But I've seen too many times, I see people who are so busy looking at their cell phones that they really don't even pay attention to traffic as they cross the street. And I've seen people almost get hit as a result of that. It happened to me just yesterday. So, it is just, again, a constant reminder that I think that all of us should have a responsibility to try to promote our traffic safety, whether it's speed with our vehicles or whether it's clear pedestrian safety or bicycle safety in our communities. Because again, our people, we get so busy in our lives that sometimes we just don't take a minute to pause. We're always in a rush sometimes to go nowhere, right? And we remind our communities in that regard. So we're working feverishly with our Vision Zero coordinator, Wade Holland, with the county in order to be able to come up with different strategies. We work with Department of Transportation as well as State Highway to identify these deficiencies along the way.
Thank you. So question from Kensington. They say, Mayor Furman says, I have residents who continue to cross Connecticut Avenue mid-block. They are of all ages. We now have a senior apartment on Knowles, and they are doing the same thing, crossing mid-block when they are just 20 feet away from the crosswalk. What can we do?
Yeah, I think that'd be a perfect example for us to come out and do some education, right? To send officers to those areas and to monitor those areas and educate our pedestrians and to actually go. And that's one of the things I think that Chief Augustine pointed out is how we can coordinate with the 4th District Commander, the 2nd District Commander, or whichever commander these neighborhoods fall within, to have our community service officers and other traffic officers come out and provide some, important information and sharing with them why it's important for crossing at intersections is important. We put a lot of money and invest in putting crosswalks and the actual signage for our pedestrians to try to keep them safe. And I think everybody has to play a collective effort to include our drivers. So we want to make sure that we're educating everybody from that aspect.
Do you have data that you can share with us on where you're seeing the biggest issues in terms of those fatalities?
Sure. Yeah, we generally will have our, I'll share that as necessary with this group. We show a map of our traffic fatalities throughout the county, and it'll give you a good idea of exactly where these events occur. Yes.
Okay, Andy, I'm going to call on you to ask your question as she finds the unmute button.
Sorry. You pointed out that you're trying to identify hot spots based on accidents, but police are only called to PIA accidents. They can't show up at every fender bender and every other accident. If there's no personal injury, then they don't come. So how is your accident info comprehensive enough to know where there are problem areas?
Well, we still document data when we get calls for service of individuals that say I'm involved in an accident at a certain intersection. We still have that in our computer-aided dispatch, and that information is transported, is basically sent over to our our traffic analysts just the same. But again, we look at collectively and I will tell you, when we look at many of the causes of the accidents, which we do respond to, we can find, we look for what is the root cause for these types of accidents in, in an intersection as an example? Is it just simply to fail to yield the right of way? What we find sometimes is we find people who are actually on their cell phones, who are texting and driving, right? Or on the phone and driving. So we find, again, a multitude of what are the root causes, but that also gives us the ability to be able to put our resources in those areas to try to focus on those particular violations in order to try to, again, to deter people from, again, from doing those acts in order to, eliminate and lower those collisions.
Those accidents are only the ones you go to. You can't find the root cause of an accident that's called in that has no PIA.
Well, I don't disagree, but we don't have the manpower to be able to go to.
I understand that.
Right.
I understand that. It's
right.
just,
as much as I would love to do that and be able to capture all of that, that's just at this point it's it's not a possible task for us right now.
so given the fact that you do collect data, for some of us who are worried about particular arteries, not little side streets, but major arteries.
Right. And that's what we focus a lot on.
Right, of course. Is there a way that I could contact, and who would I contact if I wanted to know, for example, in the last year, how many accidents were there between East West Highway and Chevy Chase Circle on Connecticut Avenue?
Oh, absolutely. I would encourage
who would we contact?
So please contact Captain Brian Dillman. He is the director of our traffic division. And again, he can connect you with any further information via his traffic analyst. And he can be reached at, his name is Brian, B-R-I-A-N. His email address .dillman, D-I-L-L-M-A-N, at MontgomeryCountyMD.gov. And he is the director of our traffic division.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
You're very welcome.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate that. Okay, so I'm going to go to hate crimes and issues. I did want to just also see, based on things that you're seeing, is there anything that you would like us to advocate for in terms of state legislation? So I know we're tracking a number of things related to just Vision Zero and traffic things. I know that there was some Vision Zero legislation passed last year, but is there anything that you would like us to help advocate for you at the state level?
Well, I will state that, we have stated again about hiring and retention. I know there's a bill related to can a police officer who has served 5 years in the military, who doesn't have citizenship, can become a police officer. I support that. Particularly, I think, again, that gives us a larger pool of people. And there's a current bill that's in place now for that. Any support that we can get on that. I know there's also an additional NOAA's law, centered around drunk driving. That's to enhance the drunk driving laws, even to make them tougher. We'd also appreciate if you all give that some consideration as well. Those are the two things that are at the top of my list that I can state. And I can talk a lot about marijuana, but there's still a lot of unanswered questions that I think that need to be addressed before we could go there. So.
Thank you. And I know we're also looking at, for municipalities, police accountability, the police boards, and then
right.
Some municipalities have expressed concern over the loud noise and mufflers, and there's some legislation enabling tracking technology that will be able to,
right.
to kind of be like speed cameras, if you will.
Yeah, we are, and we're actually working with a couple of vendors looking at. I think they're not there yet. I'm hoping that technology will be more efficient, but we are also tracking that to see if there is ways for us to be able to monitor that. I know the city of Gaithersburg has, for example, they do have some very more distinct noise ordinances that their people are allowed to be able to address more efficiently, and that might be another way. But I think, again, the technology would be great given where we are in today's environment.
Thank you. All right, so moving on, our last topic is hate crimes And a number of municipalities are seeing anti-Semitic signage. There's been in public places, there have been signs at people's homes, flyers at people's homes. There are things that are happening in our school systems. So we're going to talk about this in our business meeting, but we are going to be putting out a statement, but also sharing some resources. I appreciate that you all are tracking these issues so that we can see the magnitude of the problem. One of the things that we were talking about in some municipalities also is just the fact that sometimes it is hate speech, but not yet a crime,
Right.
but it's still very derogatory and hurtful.
Right.
And that's happening in our schools as well as within neighborhoods. We're just talking about a truck that's driving around with hate speech.
Right. Absolutely.
So what advice do you have for municipalities on how to deal with these situations?
Well, the one thing we do is, as noted, I think Chief Augustine noted it earlier, we document all of the bias incidents. And the reason why we do it is because we want to be able to capture the information from individuals who may create problems for us down the road. Again, the First Amendment is very strong and is very protected speeches, is a challenge within its own right. But we want to make sure that when we see this hateful speech that could be connected to a hateful act, and we want to be able to investigate and monitor that. So the first thing I always say is to make sure you're sharing with your community and make sure that they report these incidents. It's important that we know, and that this information is being, because we are going to document it. And that's the important message here, because it's going to be documented. And if there is a crime, absolutely, we are going to follow up to do the very best we can. Some of these cases are very challenging in order to solve, particularly when you have cases where you see individuals who are actually committing, who are drawing swastikas and other hateful messages, actually vandalizing property, which is a crime, and therefore we would want to prosecute them. And I know, working with the state's attorney's office, we work very feverishly. If we can identify these individuals, we will go after them. And we have made arrests with individuals who've done this. But it's, again, the numbers of cases that remain open are too high. I don't like it, but it's challenging unless we get and we know of information that someone is sharing with us, because these people are usually very difficult to actually identify and locate unless we've got them clearly on camera or someone has better information to share with us. So, but again, we continuously monitor. We do other investigative means, working with our other partners at the state, local, and federal levels, depending upon the degree of some of the behavior that's being shown. I will tell you, the high levels of hate crimes that we're starting to see in our schools is very disturbing. I have not seen this highest level recently. There's again, we get those reports, and the CEOs are actually are documenting them, because I get the reports on a daily basis. So we want to continue to work with MCPS in any way we can in order to be able to address just the issues that are centered around these hate crimes.
And you're documenting, for sure, crimes. Are you documenting hate speech as well? Because that's not necessarily a crime.
Yes.
Okay. So
we
that is
consider
something
those
that,
to be right. We consider those to be bias incidents. So even though it's speech and protected, we will still document it to keep as much, to try to collect as much information as possible.
Okay, that's good to know. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And you said you're seeing an increase in anti-Semitic and LGBTQ focused areas. One thing that we talked about in our municipality recently was, just the police being called on people of different races when they're just walking a neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
How do you guys interpret that?
Well, sometimes we are call takers are asking the questions of relevance to find out as much information as possible. And if they're determining that there's, you know, that this is more about someone who just is calling someone on the way they look or their race simply, and not that the individual's doing anything wrong, sometimes we handle that at the lowest level, and not to have an officer respond out at all. But then there are times, again, depending upon what's shared, the officers have to respond if they are called, and then they will address that accordingly. I have not heard too many complaints, though I'm not going to say it will never happen, because the human, just human nature of some people will cause them to do this, because we see this all across the country. But it's one of the things that I know my staff at the Emergency Communications Center is very aware of. And one of the things they are really trained to do is to try to ascertain as much information as possible, and to see whether or not, and again, sometimes it's even a consultation with a police supervisor before we even send an officer out to a call in that type of situation.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? I think Mayor Costello, you may have had one more. Do you want to ask it?
Yes, hi, Chief, and thank you so much for all you do for us and for your service.
Thank you.
I was just wondering about, for the hate crimes, do you feel like are these run by kind of larger groups, national groups, or these individuals? Do you have any sense of trends with that? And if we can do any, always think,
Right.
what can we as a community do?
Yeah, what we've seen thus far seems to be more individuals than anybody connected to any sort of hate group that we've identified. Though we continuously monitor hate groups in the county, and who may have had some activity within our county for one reason or another, but mostly what we're seeing is more from individuals, acts that we think that is not so much group connected.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you for that question, though. Thank you.
All right, we hit on all the topics that had been identified by our chapter. I just want to pause and see if there's anything else we haven't covered.
I'd like to cover one thing occurring in Laytonsville. Can I do that now?
Sure.
Chief, I've been very frustrated over the years with respect to parking, what I consider parking problems, people in the town also. We have a commercial vehicle right now. I mean, not the town, but and it's parking on Brink Road in one of those parking lanes that they put in when there's a subdivision that goes in.
Oh yes, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, and this is like 7,000 Brink Road. It's
okay.
Right intersection of 108 and Brink.
Oh, right.
And just park there day after day, all day long, night, day, night.
Okay.
It's a commercial vehicle. It has a Maine, M-A-I-N-E, Maine license plate on it. Can anything be done about something like that?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I think we can probably look into that, because there is a code that we can does not allow commercial vehicles, depending on the size, to park in residential areas. So I'll reach out to Commander Palace and have him look into this further, and we'll see what we can do to address that. Okay.
I really appreciate that. And can I ask you one more quick question?
You may.
You mentioned earlier about catalytic converters, and
yes,
I have heard from different radio stations I listen to from the police. Anyway, they said there's a huge increase in stealing the catalytic converters. Do we have that going on here in the county?
Yes, we absolutely do, Mr. Mayor, and it has been a problem. I know that Assistant Chief Augustine, we are working on a program to actually to be able to etch into catalytic converters some identification numbers for people who may want to have that on theirs, in order that if we ever capture an individual who is actually stealing these, that we'd be able to identify the owners. But yes, this is a problem. Again, it's all throughout the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area. It's a crime that these individuals are committing in order to from a financial aspect, it's a very productive manner. So we are monitoring that, and we're hoping that we'll be able to address that. But we encourage people to actually call us if they find that their vehicles might have been impacted by the catalytic converter. So,
Okay, thank you very much.
thank you, sir.
Thank you. Well, thank you so much, Chief Jones and Assistant Chief. It means a lot because I know that you guys have a whole lot on your plate, but you are taking time to meet with us and understand our issues and sharing updates with us. So this means so much to us that you come to us every year. Thank you for your time. Thank you for, you all walk into danger when everyone else runs away. So appreciate the bravery and all the hard work that you all are doing.
Well, we thank you, and we'll share that with all of our officers, and we appreciate you all's partnerships, and we look forward to coming back anytime, and feel free to reach out if you need anything.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. Have a great evening.